we're diving deep into something that affects millions of Americans every single year: marriage and divorce law. More importantly, what does the law actually say about this wild ride from wedding bells to court battles? Trust me, it's way more complicated than any rom-com ever told you. We're going to break down everything from what happens the moment you say "I do" to what your rights are if things fall apart. Whether you're thinking about tying the knot, going through a rough patch, or just curious about how the legal system handles love and breakups, this video is for you. So grab your coffee, get comfortable, and let's get into it. Let's start at the beginning. When you decide to get married in the United States, you're not just making a romantic commitment. You're entering into a legally binding contract that comes with over 1,000 federal rights and responsibilities. Yes, you heard that right, 1,000. We're talking about everything from tax benefits to hospital visitation rights, from Social Security benefits to immigration status. Marriage isn't just about love. It's about creating a legal partnership that the government recognizes and regulates. Before you even get to walk down that aisle, you need to jump through some legal hoops. Every state requires a marriage license, but the requirements vary wildly depending on where you live. Most states require you to be at least 18 years old, though some allow younger individuals to marry with parental consent or court approval. You'll need to provide identification, pay a fee that typically ranges from $20 to $100, and in some states there's a waiting period between when you get your license and when you can actually tie the knot. Some states even require blood tests, though this is becoming increasingly rare. Here's something that surprises a lot of people: common law marriage. In about a dozen states, you can actually become legally married without ever having a ceremony or getting a license. If you live together, present yourselves as married, and intend to be married, the law might consider you husband and wife. Colorado, Iowa, Kansas, Montana, and Texas are among the states that still recognize this old-school form of marriage. But don't assume this applies everywhere, because most states have abolished common law marriage. If you move from a state that recognizes it to one that doesn't, your common law marriage is still valid under the full faith and credit clause of the Constitution. Once you're married, you're in one of two property systems depending on your state: common law property or community property. This distinction might seem boring now, but it becomes absolutely critical if you ever get divorced. In common law states, which make up the majority of America, property belongs to whoever earned it or whose name is on the title. If you bought a car with your own money and it's in your name, it's yours. Pretty straightforward, right? Community property states tell a different story. Arizona, California, Idaho, Louisiana, Nevada, New Mexico, Texas, Washington, and Wisconsin follow this system. Here, almost everything acquired during the marriage belongs equally to both spouses, regardless of whose name is on it or who earned the money to buy it. That salary you earned, half belongs to your spouse. That inheritance your partner received, actually, that might be separate property, because gifts and inheritances are usually exceptions to the community property rule. Even in community property states, anything you owned before the marriage typically remains yours. Now let's talk about prenuptial agreements, because despite what reality TV might have you believe, these aren't just for the ultra-wealthy. A prenup is a contract signed before marriage that determines how assets and debts will be divided if the marriage ends. Maybe you're bringing significant assets into the marriage, or you own a business, or you want to protect family heirlooms. A prenup can address all of this. Courts will generally enforce these agreements as long as both parties entered into them voluntarily, with full disclosure of assets, and the terms aren't unconscionable or grossly unfair. That means you both need your own lawyers, you need to sign it well before the wedding, not the night before, and neither person can be coerced into signing.
Marriage also brings tax implications that can significantly affect your financial life. Married couples can file jointly, which often results in tax benefits, especially if there's a significant income disparity between spouses. However, there's also something called the marriage penalty, where two high earners might actually pay more in taxes married than they would filing as singles. You can also inherit from your spouse without paying estate taxes, thanks to the unlimited marital deduction.
Your spouse can be on your health insurance plan, and you can make medical decisions for each other if one of you becomes incapacitated. These are rights that unmarried couples simply don't have without extensive legal documentation.
But what happens when the fairy tale ends? Divorce law in America is a complex beast that varies significantly from state to state. The first thing to understand is that all 50 states now allow no-fault divorce. This means you don't need to prove that your spouse did something wrong, like adultery or abuse. You can simply cite irreconcilable differences or an irretrievable breakdown of the marriage.
California was the first state to introduce no-fault divorce back in 1970, and by 2010, every state had followed suit. However, some states also allow fault-based divorces, where proving wrongdoing might affect the division of property or alimony awards. To file for divorce, at least one spouse must meet residency requirements, which typically means living in the state for 6 months to a year. You'll file a petition for divorce, serve it to your spouse, and then the real work begins, dividing your life into 2 separate pieces. Let's talk about property division. Remember those 2 systems I mentioned earlier? In community property states, marital property is generally split 50-50. In equitable distribution states, which are the majority, courts divide property fairly but not necessarily equally. Judges consider factors like the length of the marriage, each spouse's economic circumstances, contributions to the marriage, including homemaking, and each person's age and health. Fair doesn't always mean equal, and this is where things can get contentious. A judge might decide that the spouse who sacrificed their career to raise children deserves a larger share of marital assets. Alimony, also called spousal support or maintenance, is money paid from one spouse to another after divorce. The purpose is to help the lower-earning spouse maintain a similar standard of living to what they had during the marriage. Not every divorce involves alimony. Courts consider the length of the marriage, the standard of living established during the marriage, each spouse's age and health, their earning capacity, and whether one spouse sacrificed career opportunities for the marriage. Alimony can be temporary, rehabilitative to help a spouse become self-sufficient, or in rare cases involving long marriages, permanent. Tax law changes in 2018 eliminated the tax deduction for alimony for divorces finalized after that date, which has changed how couples negotiate these payments. Child custody and support are often the most emotionally charged aspects of divorce. Courts make custody decisions based on the best interests of the child, considering factors like each parent's ability to provide stability, the child's relationship with each parent, any history of domestic violence, and, depending on the child's age, even their preference. Courts increasingly favor joint custody arrangements where both parents remain actively involved in their children's lives, though the specifics of how time is divided can vary enormously. Gone are the days when mothers automatically got custody. Modern courts recognize that children benefit from meaningful relationships with both parents. Child support is calculated using state-specific guidelines that consider both parents' incomes, the number of children, and who has primary custody. The non-custodial parent typically pays support to help cover the children's expenses, including food, clothing, housing,
education, and health care. Unlike alimony, child support isn't negotiable. Parents can't agree to waive it because the money belongs to the child, not the parents.
Child support obligations continue until the child reaches the age of majority, typically 18, though some states extend this if the child is still in high school or has special needs. The divorce process can take different forms. An uncontested divorce, where both spouses agree on all terms, can be relatively quick and inexpensive, sometimes finalized in a few months. A contested divorce, where spouses disagree on major issues, can drag on for months or years and cost tens of thousands of dollars in legal fees. Many states now require mediation before going to trial, encouraging couples to work out their differences with a neutral third party rather than letting a judge decide their fate. Mediation is usually cheaper, faster, and less adversarial than going to court.
Legal separation is another option that's often misunderstood. It's not the same as divorce. You're still legally married, but you live apart and have a court-approved agreement about finances, property, and, if applicable, children. Some couples choose this for religious reasons, to maintain health insurance benefits, or because they're not ready to permanently end the marriage but need legal protection and structure while living apart.
Annulment is different from divorce because it treats the marriage as if it never legally existed. Grounds for annulment are limited and include fraud, bigamy, inability to consummate the marriage, lack of mental capacity, or being underage at the time of marriage. Annulments are much less common than divorces and can be difficult to obtain. You typically need to prove that something fundamental was wrong with the marriage from the very beginning, not just that things didn't work out. So there you have it, the complete journey from love to lawsuit, from wedding vows to legal battles. American marriage and divorce law is this fascinating intersection of romance and bureaucracy, where matters of the heart meet matters of property division and tax law. Whether you're thinking about getting married, going through a divorce, or just curious about how the system works, understanding these laws can help you make informed decisions about one of life's biggest commitments. Remember, every state is different, and laws are constantly evolving, so if you're facing a real legal situation, always consult with a family law attorney in your jurisdiction who can give you advice specific to your circumstances. If you found this video helpful, smash that like button, subscribe for more legal breakdowns that actually make sense, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss future videos. Drop a comment below telling me what legal topic you want me to tackle next.
Should we dive into employment law? Criminal justice? Let me know. Until next time, stay informed, stay empowered, and remember that knowledge is your best protection. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.